The sun had set over the small town of Cedar Grove, Florida, painting the sky in shades of crimson and purple. The air was thick with humidity, and a low rumble of distant thunder warned of an approaching storm. The locals were used to hurricane season. They stocked up on canned goods and water every year, but this year felt different. Rumors swirled about a hurricane named Milton, one that the government was allegedly downplaying. As the evening progressed, these whispers turned into hushed conversations at the local diner, the Coral Reef. Clara, a waitress who had worked at the diner for over a decade, overheard snippets of anxious chatter while serving coffee. "Did you hear they're not even issuing warnings?" one man said, shaking his head. "This is going to be bad." Her instincts kicked in, fueled by years of serving residents who treated the diner like a town hall. She noticed a pattern, the same faces, the same fears. When the news came through about Hurricane Milton, it was buried beneath stories of more mundane matters. It didn't sit right with her. That night, Clara returned home and turned on her TV. The local news anchor, an overly cheerful woman, brushed aside the storm, emphasizing that residents should not panic. "It's just another tropical storm," she insisted. Clara felt a knot in her stomach. As she flicked through the channels, she found a live feed from a local weather station. The meteorologist, a man with a serious demeanor, was talking about something different. "Folks, what I'm seeing on the radar is concerning. We need to prepare for a potential Category 4 storm. This is not just another tropical disturbance." He glanced down at his notes, then back at the camera. "But I have to emphasize that we are not getting the full story from higher-ups. Please take this seriously." Clara's heart raced. She grabbed her phone and called her friend Sarah, who worked at the emergency management office. "Sarah, is there any truth to what the meteorologist just said?" "Clara, I can't talk about this," Sarah said, her voice shaky. "They're downplaying it. I wish I could say more." The call ended abruptly, leaving Clara with more questions than answers. As the night wore on, the wind picked up outside, rattling the shutters. Clara tried to sleep, but the anxiety gnawed at her. What was really happening? Why were they hiding the truth about Hurricane Milton? The next day, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The town seemed oblivious, going about its routine as if a storm wasn't brewing just off the coast. But Clara was determined to uncover the truth. She decided to visit the local library, hoping to find records about past hurricanes and any information on Milton. When she arrived, the librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Jenkins, greeted her with a concerned look. "Clara, I've heard the rumors too. It's unsettling." Clara nodded, her stomach twisting. She rummaged through old newspaper clippings, tracing the history of hurricanes that had struck Florida. What she found was alarming. Hurricanes that had been predicted as weak turned out to be devastating. As she pieced together the puzzle, Clara stumbled upon a file labeled Hurricane Milton. It contained documents that seemed out of place, redacted reports and memos from the National Weather Service. Her heart raced as she read through them. It became evident that there was a pattern of deception. She learned that the government had a history of downplaying storms, especially those that could lead to mass panic. Clara's blood ran cold as she realized the potential implications. If Hurricane Milton was as severe as the meteorologist had suggested, Cedar Grove wouldn't stand a chance. Clara checked her phone and saw missed calls from Sarah. She called back, desperation in her voice. "Sarah, I found something. They're hiding information about Milton. We need to warn people." "No one will listen, Clara," Sarah replied, her voice a whisper. "If you keep digging, you could put yourself in danger." Clara felt a surge of anger. People deserve to know the truth. I can't just sit back and let them be blindsided. As she hung up, Clara felt an unsettling presence in the library. The atmosphere shifted, the air charged with tension. She glanced around, half expecting someone to be watching her. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in. Ignoring the instinct to flee, she focused on the documents in front of her. As she continued her research, a chilling thought crept into her mind. What if the government wasn't just hiding information? What if they had a more sinister plan? Clara's investigation took a darker turn as she dug deeper into the history of Hurricane Milton. The records hinted at government experiments, referencing weather manipulation technologies and military involvement in previous storms. Her stomach twisted at the implications. Had they created this hurricane? Determined to find answers, Clara reached out to a few trusted friends, local fishermen and survivalists who had their ears to the ground. They confirmed her fears. Strange activity had been reported along the coast. Boats that typically fished the waters had returned early, their crews whispering about sightings of military ships and unusual weather patterns. That evening, as Clara sat in her living room, she received a call from a number she didn't recognize. "Clara," a deep voice said, "you need to stop digging, you're getting too close." She felt a chill race down her spine. "Who is this?" "It doesn't matter, just trust me. They'll come for you if you don't back off." The line went dead. Clara's heart pounded. Who were they? What did they want? As night fell, the winds howled outside, rattling her windows. She peered through the curtains, her breath catching in her throat. Shadows moved along the street, figures that didn't belong there. Her instincts screamed at her to hide, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The next day, Clara decided to take action. She gathered a few close friends at the coral reef, hoping to convince them of the imminent danger. As she spoke, their expressions shifted from skepticism to concern. "Listen, I know this sounds crazy," Clara said, her voice trembling, "but if Hurricane Milton hits us like I think it will, we need to be prepared. We have to warn the town." But even as she spoke, Clara could see the doubt in their eyes. The government had everyone under its thumb, and fear of repercussions held them back. The conversations around her faded into white noise as the realization set in. She was on her own. Days turned into a blur of anxiety and urgency. As the storm approached, Clara felt the walls closing in around her. The government's silence about Hurricane Milton felt suffocating, and the atmosphere in Cedar Grove grew tense. The townspeople continued to go about their lives, dismissing Clara's warnings as hysteria. With no one willing to listen, Clara took to social media, posting about the impending storm and urging people to prepare. "If you live in Cedar Grove, please heed the warnings," she typed frantically, praying someone would take her seriously. But most comments were dismissive, even mocking. "Just another hurricane," one read. "Stay calm and carry on." In the days leading up to the storm, Clara began to notice strange occurrences. Cars she didn't recognize parked outside her house, people lingering just a bit too long. When she'd glance out the window, they'd vanish, but their presence sent a chill down her spine. On the evening before the storm was set to hit, Clara received another ominous call. "You need to leave, Clara. They're coming for you." The voice was frantic, almost pleading. "You're in danger." Panic surged through her as she hung up. Should she run? But where could she go? She couldn't abandon Cedar Grove. Not now. She grabbed her emergency kit and prepared to barricade her doors. As the winds picked up outside, Clara heard a loud crash. She rushed to the window and saw branches and debris swirling in the air. Fear clawed at her throat as she realized the storm was now upon them. The skies darkened ominously, a prelude to chaos. With the first wave of rain, the power flickered and then went out. Clara felt a knot of dread twist in her stomach. She grabbed her flashlight and scanned the room, feeling more isolated than ever. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the front door. Heart racing, she approached cautiously. With trembling hands, she opened the door just a crack. To her horror, she saw several figures shrouded in darkness, their faces hidden by the shadows. "Clara, open up," one of the figures shouted. She recognized the voice. It was Tom, one of her friends from the diner. Relief washed over her, and she swung the door open. "We need to talk." Tom rushed inside, drenched and frantic. "They're trying to silence you. The storm is just a cover." "What do you mean?" Clara asked, confusion and fear mingling in her voice. "There are people out there, agents or something. They've been watching you. It's like they know you're onto something." Clara's heart sank. She couldn't believe this was happening. "What do we do?" "We gather the others," Tom said, glancing out the window, fear etched on his face. "We warn the town and prepare for the worst." As the wind howled outside, Clara and Tom made their way back to the coral reef, where a few of their friends had already gathered. The storm raged around them, but they had a singular focus: to warn Cedar Grove of the impending disaster. When they arrived, Clara's heart raced as she saw more people than she expected. Local fishermen, survivalists, and even a few skeptical townsfolk who had finally come around. "What's happening?" someone shouted over the wind. "Milton is worse than we thought," Clara said, urgency gripping her voice. "We have to evacuate, or we'll be trapped when it hits." As they shared their findings and concerns, the atmosphere shifted from disbelief to a united front. "We need to spread the word," Tom suggested. "Social media, word of mouth, whatever it takes." Just as they started to mobilize, the lights flickered back on, casting an eerie glow in the diner. The door swung open, and the figures Clara had seen earlier stepped inside, this time illuminated by the diner's fluorescent lights. Clara's heart raced. These were not just any townsfolk. "Everyone, stay calm," one of the agents said, his voice cold and authoritative. "We're here to ensure safety and prevent panic." "Safety," Clara spat. "You've been hiding the truth about the hurricane. We need to prepare." The agent's eyes narrowed, and Clara felt the tension in the room heighten. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he said, his tone dripping with menace. "Leave this to us." Panic spread among the crowd as they realized they were trapped. Clara knew they had to act fast. "We're not backing down," she shouted, rallying her friends. "We're going to warn everyone." The agents exchanged glances, and Clara saw the threat in their eyes. The storm outside was only a whisper of the chaos about to unfold. The storm intensified, rattling the windows of the coral reef as fear and uncertainty gripped the crowd inside. Clara could feel the tension thickening like the air before a lightning strike. She looked at her friends, their faces painted with resolve despite the fear in their eyes. "Listen," she said, raising her voice above the roar of the wind. "If we stay here, we're just waiting to be swept away, both by the storm and whatever the government has planned. We need to warn everyone." "Are you crazy?" one of the fishermen shouted. "We can't just go out there." "Staying here is just as dangerous," Clara insisted. "We need to gather supplies and get to the evacuation center. It's our best shot." The agents moved closer, their expressions darkening. "You're making a mistake, Clara," one of them said. "You have no idea what you're up against." Ignoring the threat, Clara grabbed a flashlight and headed for the door. The others hesitated for a moment but eventually followed her lead, driven by the desperation to escape the encroaching storm and the looming threat of the agents. As they stepped outside, the wind howled like a banshee, lashing rain against their faces. The streets of Cedar Grove were a chaotic scene, debris scattered everywhere, trees bent at unnatural angles. Clara's heart raced as they made their way toward the evacuation center, determined to save their town. But as they moved deeper into the storm, Clara felt the weight of eyes on her. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw the agents following closely, their presence an unsettling reminder of the dangers they faced. "They're coming for us," she shouted, urging her friends to pick up the pace. With each step, Clara's resolve grew stronger. The people of Cedar Grove deserved to know the truth about Hurricane Milton, and she would fight to make sure they were prepared. As they neared the evacuation center, Clara noticed something strange. A flickering light in the distance, pulsing like a heartbeat. "What is that?" she asked, pointing toward the eerie glow. "It's coming from the beach," Tom said, his voice laced with confusion. "We should check it out." Against her better judgment, Clara felt drawn to the light, an inexplicable pull urging her forward. The group hesitated, but Clara forged ahead, driven by an insatiable curiosity. When they reached the beach, the sight before them was surreal. A large, metallic structure stood half submerged in the sand, pulsating with an unnatural energy. Clara's heart raced as she approached, the wind howling around her like a ghostly warning. "What is this?" Tom asked, eyes wide with disbelief. "It looks like some sort of machine," Clara whispered, her mind racing with possibilities. Had the government truly been manipulating the weather? Was this what they were trying to hide? Just then, the agents emerged from the shadows, their faces grim. "You shouldn't have come here," one of them said, his voice low and threatening. "We need to know what this is," Clara shouted defiantly. "What have you done?" "Back away now," the agent warned, but Clara stood her ground. She felt a sense of purpose, fueled by the knowledge that they were on the brink of something monumental. The machine began to hum, the pulsing light growing more intense. Clara could feel the energy in the air shift, a tangible tension that crackled like static electricity. "We have to destroy it," she shouted, adrenaline surging through her veins. Tom nodded, and together they searched for something to use as a weapon. "We can't let them use this to unleash Milton on us," he yelled, and Clara agreed. Just as they found a piece of debris to use, the agents lunged forward, trying to stop them. A struggle ensued, chaos erupting as the storm raged on, wind and rain battering against them. Clara fought back, fueled by the determination to protect her town. Amid the chaos, Clara's thoughts raced. They couldn't let the agents regain control. The fate of Cedar Grove hung in the balance. As she struggled against one of the agents, she felt the pulsing light from the machine grow stronger, almost as if it were reacting to their conflict. "Clara, we need to get it down," Tom shouted, wrestling another agent to the ground. Clara broke free and hurled the debris at the machine, striking it hard. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the air, and the pulsing light flickered violently. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as they all looked at the machine. The agents' faces twisted in fear, realizing their control was slipping. The air crackled with energy, and Clara felt a surge of hope. "Do it again," Tom urged, rallying the others. "We can't let them stop us." Clara nodded, gathering her strength and throwing more debris at the machine. Each strike intensified the energy, the light flashing in sync with the howling wind. The agents scrambled to regain control, their panic palpable. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them, and Clara felt the full force of the storm converge. The wind screamed, a cacophony of fury, as the machine began to resonate with the chaos around it. It was as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. "Get back," one of the agents shouted, retreating as the machine sparked and whirred ominously. Clara could see their fear. They had underestimated the power they were playing with. The storm grew violent, swirling around them like a cyclone. "We have to go," Tom yelled, grabbing Clara's arm. "Now." But as they turned to flee, a blinding flash erupted from the machine, illuminating the night. Clara felt herself being pulled toward it, an overwhelming force drawing her closer. In that moment, she realized the truth. They had awakened something far beyond their understanding. With a deafening roar, the machine unleashed a shockwave that knocked everyone off their feet. Clara landed hard in the sand, her vision blurring as the storm raged on. She could hear the chaos around her, the shouts of her friends mingling with the roar of the hurricane. As she struggled to regain her footing, Clara saw the agents scrambling to escape, their plan unraveling before their eyes. The storm had transformed into something more, a monstrous entity born of their manipulation. "Clara, we need to leave," Tom yelled, urgency lacing his voice. But Clara couldn't tear her eyes away from the machine. It pulsed with a dark energy, the source of their impending doom. "I can't just leave it," she shouted back. "We need to stop it." "Clara," Tom's voice broke through the chaos. "It's too late. We have to go." Finally, the reality of their situation settled in. The storm was no longer just a hurricane. It was a manifestation of everything they had awakened. Clara felt a mix of fear and determination surge within her. They had to warn the town. With one last glance at the machine, Clara turned and sprinted toward the evacuation center. The storm raged around them, but she knew they couldn't stop now. Cedar Grove needed to know the truth. As Clara and her friends reached the evacuation center, they were met with chaos. Townsfolk were panicking, confusion reigning as the reality of Hurricane Milton hit them. Clara felt a surge of adrenaline as she shouted for attention. "Everyone, listen," she cried, her voice cutting through the noise. "We need to evacuate now. The storm is worse than we thought." But the townspeople, still reeling from the initial disbelief, hesitated. Clara could see the skepticism in their eyes, the fear holding them back. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "The government has been hiding the truth. We need to get out before it's too late." Finally, some of her friends stepped forward, rallying the others. "She's right," Tom yelled. "We've seen it. Milton is a threat we can't ignore." Slowly, the crowd began to listen, a sense of urgency rising. Clara's heart raced as she saw fear transform into determination. They needed to get everyone out. Gather supplies, water, food, whatever you can find, Clara instructed, her voice steadying as adrenaline coursed through her veins. We have to move fast. As they mobilized, Clara felt the storm's fury intensifying outside. The wind howled like a beast, lashing against the building. Each crash of thunder resonated like a countdown, amplifying her fear. "Where's Sarah?" Tom asked suddenly, panic flashing in his eyes. Clara's heart sank. Sarah had been working at the emergency management office, and she hadn't been with them since the chaos began. "I don't know," Clara admitted, fear creeping into her voice. She could be in danger. Tom's expression hardened. "We can't leave her. We have to find her." Without waiting for a response, he dashed toward the door. Clara hesitated but felt a surge of loyalty. "I'm coming with you," she shouted, and they pushed back into the storm. As they fought against the wind, Clara's mind raced. They needed to find Sarah before it was too late. Each step felt like a battle as debris flew past them, the storm intensifying with every moment. They made their way to the emergency management office, the building flickering ominously in the dark. Clara could feel the energy in the air shifting, the storm almost alive, as if it were watching them. When they reached the office, the door was ajar, swinging wildly in the wind. Clara's heart raced as they stepped inside. The room was dark, papers strewn across the floor, monitors flickering with static. "Sarah," Clara called, her voice swallowed by the storm outside. A low groan echoed from the back of the office, and Clara's breath hitched. "Sarah," she shouted again, moving toward the sound. "Are you here?" She turned a corner and found Sarah slumped against a wall, fear etched across her face. "Clara," she gasped, relief flooding her eyes. "I thought I was done for." "What happened?" Clara asked, rushing to her side. "They were looking for you. The agents. They knew you were onto something. They were trying to shut me up," Sarah explained, panic in her voice. "I had to hide." Clara felt a mix of relief and anger. "They're not going to stop us," she vowed. "We're evacuating the town. Now." As they moved to leave, the storm outside reached a deafening crescendo. Clara could feel the ground tremble beneath her feet. They burst through the door, and the full force of Hurricane Milton hit them like a wall. The storm had reached its peak, the wind screaming like a living entity. Clara and her friends struggled to navigate the chaos as they made their way back to the evacuation center. The world around them had become a swirling tempest of destruction. The town of Cedar Grove transformed into a battleground against nature itself. "Clara, we need to hurry," Tom shouted over the cacophony. "It's only going to get worse." They pushed forward, urgency driving them as debris flew past them like missiles. Clara's heart pounded in her chest, fear clawing at her insides. Each step felt like a race against time. As they finally neared the evacuation center, Clara spotted a figure stumbling toward them, one of the agents, disheveled and frantic. "You have to stop," he yelled, his voice barely audible over the storm. "You don't know what you're unleashing." "Get away from us," Clara shouted, but something in the agent's eyes made her pause. "We know what you've done. We're not backing down." "No, you don't understand," he pleaded, desperation lacing his voice. "Milton is a weapon, something we thought we could control, but it's gone beyond anything we imagined." "Then why should we trust you?" Sarah snapped, glaring at him. "Because if you don't stop this, it will destroy everything," he insisted, eyes wild with fear. "The storm is a result of our manipulation. It's become sentient." Clara's heart sank as the implications hit her like a ton of bricks. They hadn't just created a hurricane, they had unleashed a force of nature that now threatened to consume them all. "What do we do?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "We have to destroy the source," the agent said, urgency sharpening his tone. "The machine on the beach. It's the only way to stop Milton." Tom turned to Clara, eyes filled with resolve. "We have to go back." With no time to waste, they turned and sprinted back into the storm. Clara's heart raced as they fought against the elements, knowing that their fate, and the fate of Cedar Grove, hung in the balance. As they approached the beach, the scene was catastrophic. Waves crashed violently against the shore, the machine pulsing ominously against the backdrop of the storm. "We have to disable it," Clara shouted, urgency propelling them forward. They reached the machine just as a blinding flash illuminated the night sky. The energy surged, a visible manifestation of the storm's fury. Clara felt an electric charge in the air, as if the storm itself were reacting to their presence. "Get ready," Clara yelled, signaling her friends to take cover. They gathered their strength, ready to destroy the machine that had brought them to this point. As they launched debris at the structure, the machine sparked and sputtered, the light flickering wildly. The ground shook beneath them, the storm screaming in protest. "Keep going," Tom shouted, adrenaline fueling their efforts. Clara felt her determination intensify as they fought against the overwhelming force of nature. But just as they thought they were gaining ground, a deafening roar erupted from the machine, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. The storm surged, wild and chaotic, as if the very essence of nature were fighting back. "Clara, we need to get out of here," Sarah yelled, panic surging in her voice. "No, we can't stop now," Clara shouted back, her heart racing as the storm raged on. With one final push, Clara and her friends hurled everything they could at the machine. The air crackled with energy, the light pulsating wildly as the storm roared around them. Finally, with a blinding flash, the machine erupted in a burst of sparks, sending debris flying in all directions. Clara felt a rush of air as the storm howled, the chaos of nature enveloping them. And then, silence. When Clara opened her eyes, she found herself lying on the beach, the storm dissipating around her. The sky was clear, an eerie calm replacing the chaos that had engulfed Cedar Grove. Her heart raced as she sat up, scanning the area for her friends. "Tom, Sarah," she shouted, panic rising in her chest. The beach was eerily quiet, and for a moment, Clara feared the worst. But then she spotted them, slowly rising to their feet nearby. "We did it," Tom gasped, disbelief etched across his face. "We actually stopped it." The weight of the moment settled over them as they processed what had just happened. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes, a mix of relief and sorrow for what they had endured. "But at what cost?" she whispered, glancing around at the destruction left in the storm's wake. As they began to regroup, Clara spotted the agents in the distance, gathering their composure. Their expressions were somber, and for a brief moment, Clara felt a flicker of sympathy. They were just as affected by the chaos they had created. But Clara quickly shook off that feeling. "We need to warn the town," she urged, turning back to her friends. "They deserve to know the truth about what happened." As they made their way back towards Cedar Grove, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced unimaginable odds and emerged on the other side, but their fight wasn't over. The truth had to come to light, and the townspeople needed to understand the reality of what had transpired. When they reached the evacuation center, the scene was a mixture of confusion and relief. People were emerging from their shelters, bewildered by the sudden calm. Clara stood before the crowd, heart pounding as she prepared to speak. "Everyone, listen," she shouted, capturing their attention. "You need to know what just happened. The storm, Hurricane Milton, wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a weapon, something that the government tried to control, and it nearly destroyed us all." Gasps spread through the crowd as they processed her words. "But we stopped it," Clara continued, determination igniting her voice. "We fought back and we won, but we need to stay vigilant. We can't let them manipulate us again." As Clara spoke, she saw nods of agreement ripple through the crowd. The fear in their eyes began to shift, transforming into something more powerful: resilience. The townsfolk began to rally around her, a sense of unity emerging from the chaos. Clara felt a swell of hope as she realized that they were not just survivors. They were warriors, ready to reclaim their town and their truth. "Let's come together as a community," Clara urged. "We have to rebuild and make sure this never happens again. Together, we are stronger." As the crowd cheered, Clara felt a sense of purpose solidify within her. They would not only rebuild Cedar Grove, they would rise from the ashes, determined to protect their home from any future threats. The storm had tested them, but it had also revealed their strength, and they would face whatever came next, together.